Rebellious Studio presents the Mind Body Podcast with your host, Maria Angelova. Hi, Rebels, and welcome to the Mind Body Podcast, your rebellious podcast with me, your host, Maria. Your podcast all about a strong body, calm mind, healing, and fully living. It is my pleasure to have with me today Dr. Fern Kazlow. How are you doing, Dr. K?
I am doing awesome. I'm really excited to be here with you. And we've had some fun even just starting talking. So
I know we could have just kept talking.
yes,
So
no,
let's
I'm excited to be here.
Convert that into a fun, rebellious episode because I definitely think we have two very rebellious spirits right now on air. So I have a good feeling about this. So let's start with telling people who is Dr. K, with you giving us 3 words and a little bit of a backstory behind each one of them.
Okay, well, when I first heard that you ask that question sometimes, I was like, rebel, rebel, rebel. And then I thought, okay, let me go a little deeper, because rebel, rebel, rebel made me think rebel without a cause, like just rebel to be a rebel. But it's not that. And so it really is deep connected. Now I put dashes, so the 3 words we're just kind of playing with that, right? Rule breaker, we're not even counting that one. So deep connector, paradigm shifter, and rebel.
Okay.
And backstory, I mean, connection to me really is everything. And every issue that we have, underlying it is a disconnection. And the disconnection can be from ourselves, from our family, our community, our work, God, however we hold that. But if you go deep enough, there's always a disconnection. And I'm all about really connecting with people, with God, with my community again. But one of my favorite compliments that people give me that has to do with connection, but said a different way, is they say, Dr. Kazlow, you really get me. You get me like nobody else does. And either I know you can help me, or if they've already been clients or patients, you really help me. So that getting people is about deep connection.
Yeah.
So deep connection.
I can so relate to that. And so many things pop into my head. I'll tell you, I was talking to a client and I have a lot of people opening up with very personal stories because I think you would agree with me that our body holds on to traumas, to things that have happened, right? And when we start moving, sometimes we start releasing some of that. And then what do you feel? What is this reminding you of? What is the heaviness and so forth? And people start sharing stories. And one client told me, she said, it's so easy to share with you and not feel judged.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel in a very safe space. And I would tell you, there are a lot of Pilates coaches, teachers who create a studio where they have clients. People come in and they go out and there is really no relationship. Mm-hmm. The one thing that's very special about my studio, and it goes exactly to what you said, is I love the relationships that are created because I am very much relationship driven. So I consider the people who come here really special. I consider them friends. I consider them family. I know for a lot of them, their families, I know their story, their kids, right? Their birthdays, what's going on into their lives. And I think that creates so much more richness into our lives. Mm-hmm. And to something else you just said, I think the power of the community and the tribe is so important, especially nowadays. I mean, with technology, and now I see a lot of talk about AI, we're becoming so disconnected. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And our connections are becoming so superficial. And I think that's really sad.
It's really sad. It's scary too. And not in like, oh, let's panic, but in terms of, okay, let's really pay attention to what we're doing here. And you're talking about relationship and Pilates. I mean, healing takes place in relationship. The nervous system gets regulated in relationship. Trauma gets processed in relationship. So when you leave that out, and this idea that I just saw something crazy about them using a robot dog and making the skin warm so that it would feel more like an actual dog instead of a robot. I mean, we're going down quite a concerning path. It's kind of a joke. It's like we recognize the importance of connection, so let's do it in this disconnected way of AI and making a dog have warm skin so that we don't have to clean up poop, train it, be there, or really have a real relationship.
Yeah. Well, as a professional, what do you say about the importance of relationships, through connections? I know that's also becoming a hot topic for kids nowadays in the context of mental wellness, because kids are growing very differently than the way probably you and I grew up, right?
I think there's one thing that says it all. If you don't hold baby, if you don't have this deep connective relationship with the baby, they either don't thrive or they even die.
Yeah.
So as an older person, you may not like actually die. You might keep breathing, but I talk about something I call subtle suicide. And to me, if you're not really growing and living fully, you're either living and growing or stagnating and dying. And when we disconnect, like people are disconnecting, part of them is dying off and they're going on that path because human is about connection. We're here to be part of a connected community. And once we do away with that, they talk transhumanism. Well, that's crazy. You're human or you're not, or you're that disconnected human, which is so painful. So painful. And I think that's what we're seeing. I mean, suicide rates are up, all kinds of things, mental health. I mean, I work with entrepreneurs and it says 72% of entrepreneurs report as mental health issues, 72%.
Yeah.
So I think the way we're living, we need to make some adjustments, but not in a judgmental way, like you were saying. I mean, that's one of the things too, for me, is that I really work hard. Obviously, I'm human, and do I ever judge? Yes, I do. But my goal is to be discerning, but not judgmental. And that's what I try and teach my students, do with my clients and my patients, is you want to be really present. You want to come from love, an open-hearted place, and you don't want to be in judgment. You want to be discerning, because if somebody's dangerous, you don't want to be around. If you pick up some danger, you actually want to be clear enough that you can discern actual danger versus a trigger, right, or something else, so you can act appropriately.
Yeah.
But when you judge somebody, it's kind of interesting. You actually lock them more into that position. I don't know, from things that you've read or heard me say, I call myself the resistor in chief, right? I am the #1 expert in peak performance resistance, professionally and personally. I get it, right? And when we call somebody in a way that's negative, even in our minds, because our minds have that power beyond our mind, right? Even that, we're actually getting them to defend against it. And in defending against it, they become more of it. So it's really interesting. Everything we try and accomplish, when we say like naughty dog, or you'll say I use dog a lot, or whether it's for a child or whether it's to ourselves, because we talk to ourselves horribly, way too often, those things lock us in instead of being discerning and making a decision and a commitment. And I know you're about that, just from what I've seen and watched with you with LinkedIn, is like being discerning is really important. Being committed, but being judgmental. People are judgmental for good reason, but it doesn't work. It doesn't do what they want. It does the opposite.
And let's talk about also the perspective of being judgmental. What does it do for you, right? Okay, that's one thing for the person, but let's talk about, again, from a professional standpoint, how is being judgmental not serving us?
Oh, okay. I love that, because people don't ask that question very often. The only time I kind of get into that is when I talk about forgiveness. And like, okay, it's not about them. I mean, yeah, it is about them, but it's really about you. So if you feel your body, because I had one of the first holistic centers in the world, one of the first mind-body centers, when that was like voodoo. The only thing the body was like, if you had psychosomatic illness, which people don't even use that term anymore. What did that mean? It was all in your head. You weren't really sick. It was in your head. Or stress. They did say stress kills, right? But we understand it far, better today. So if you feel your body, if you go into judgment, even like anybody listening, and where you're doing it, if we think something judgmental, just when I said it, did you see my face start to make a face?
Facial expression
right?
change.
So my expression changed, and my shoulders lifted, and I got contracted. Notice what happens in your body. Think about something, and you may be like, have a right, like they may be behaving in a way that has all kinds of really horrible consequences. But when you get into that space, even talking about it, my shoulders, I contract, my heart shuts down. So it's really it doesn't help me to be who I am or who I want to be. It doesn't help me change or create what I want. It sends out vibes into the universe, which are not, it doesn't send out the things that, no, I mean, I don't know if you know Greg Braden. I mean, I think you kind of read that and something I talked about. So Greg Braden is really interesting because
the books that you mentioned.
oh my God, Greg Braden, I've watched him for decades, and Greg Braden talks about studies that were done where they found that if the square root of 1% of a population, okay, square root of 1% of population, so it was early work, studied people praying, but not like, oh my God, this has got to happen, please God. No, but in a more neutral, positive way, that the course of history was changed. Wars, rapes, murders, climactic events in the period of time that the community was praying. Now he's kind of even expanded that and said the square root of 1% of the population can raise the consciousness of the planet. So if we move out of judgment, okay, which we don't even have to say out loud, but when we say out loud, it amplifies it. One of my things in creating the Power Collaborative, which is something that I've recently founded, is to bring together people who want to be part of that. They want to grow themselves, right? We're all 100% responsible for ourselves, not 50-50 in a relationship, 100%, 100%. And they want to impact the world in a positive way, because some people don't want to do it in a positive way. And they want to be part of that square root of 1%. They may not think about it like that, but they want to be part of the change makers that really contribute. We're in a precipice, and we're going in directions that are very concerning, as I said, a little bit, and you said, but it's not that we can't shift that, but that's the key. We, not me, not you, we, and square root of 1% is not such a big number. Yeah. So if we come together, we've got a lot of power, a positive power to make changes. But that goes back to what you said about judgment. If we're in judgment, instead of discernment, preference, open-heartedness, we're not going to create what we want, because the vibration we're putting out is judgment. Judgment, and if you think of it, that's not a very high vibration, but discernment, wisdom, taking right actions, those are very high vibration states.
I have in my studio, I have a little board and I have a piece of paper. To be honest with you, I don't know who to credit this with, but it has the different emotions and their vibrations. It goes from highest to lowest. Mm-hmm. So when we speak to clients and they say, for example, let's say grief, right? I'm grieving. So let's look where grief is on that diagram, right? And why, when you're grieving, for example, you need to take so much self-care of yourself because you're vibrating really low, right? And to keep yourself up, you have to do things that fill your cup, things that make you feel better. And I think talking about that vibration and the state that we're in, I think something else you mentioned, yes, as a collective, we work together, but you also mentioned the personal responsibility, right? It all starts with us. So if I am not vibing high and I'm part of your collective, but I'm not contributing positively to your collective, then that doesn't go, that's not in alignment, right?
Exactly. And so I want to say something about what you said, if I can just, I don't want to interrupt. But you said about grief and the vibrations that are not like joy and et cetera. Right. One thing I want to really be clear with people is that we don't want to suppress those either. Okay. Right. It's not like they're bad. Okay. It's that they're part of the human experience. And so we want to process them and let them move through us like river. They move through us. So you want to feel them, experience them, get the information, and then allow them. And sometimes they need a little help to move through us. But we don't, one of the things we do a lot with kids and adults is we really, because we get uncomfortable or because we've been miseducated, we make them think having anger is bad or having fear is bad, you're a coward, or having grief. No, it's what you do with it. If you live your life stuck in grief, if you act out your anger is important. And you got to let it move through you, or you don't have to, but you're going to be healthier. Serve you better if you and the world better. So I just wanted to say that because you're absolutely right about vibration. And I don't want people to think that you're saying, and I know you wouldn't say, don't have your feelings. So I just wanted to add that because
I think that's so important that you mentioned that, because I will tell you from what I'm observing, what people throw themselves is because they don't want to face the emotion. Let's take grief as an example. They get really busy, right? Because now I'm busy, now I don't have to deal with that, but then they can't sleep, they don't eat well, right? They're edgy. And it's because they're fighting within themselves to suppress something that's in there. And maybe they need a good cry, maybe they need to punch the pillow because they're angry about whatever happened, right? But we have to give ourselves space. And I think I'm so glad you brought this up, because we're not trained to give ourselves space to process emotions. It's just like, we'll suppress them, put them down there, and let's keep going forward. That's not healthy.
No, and the population I work with a lot, which are high achieving entrepreneurs, professionals, CEOs, it's like, we do it. You know it because you do. I know, I can tell you've like worked through a lot of that. We do it really, really well. And we have a lot, it's like you get to a certain point, you have a lot to lose. It's kind of seemingly worked to a point. So changing it, not only is it scary, but it's actually against self-preservation, because self-preservation is like, well, this worked. It got me here. I'm still alive. You may be young enough to not be sick or something like that. It hasn't gotten you sick. And you don't know about the other states yet. So it's really important. And I think the place to me where it starts is, I used to think everybody needed therapy. As a therapist, I thought everybody needs to learn to build emotional capacity. And therapists are really good at that because we're really trained. And one of the issues, very few coaches are trained to really work with those uncomfortable states in themselves or their clients, to sit with it. As a therapist, I had years of supervision. I still go if I have either a difficult case and I want to have a colleague that I want to work with, or if I learn something new, because I'm always learning. So that's something that's huge. And we don't do. It's like building the capacity to have all your thoughts, all your feelings, your energetic flowing, your spiritual connections. That is about developing capacity, and your body, right? To have like a healthy state, because you talked about trauma, getting out of the body. The body is the place where we usually take the trauma in like that, which is why people say, I don't get it. I don't believe that anymore, but their body still believes it.
Holding into
Right?
it.
Body, but it comes from the fact that people think the thought happened first. And it's one of the problems with a lot of mindset is an outcome. It's not like change your mind, because you've got to deal with a combination that's different for everybody. Where it is that it's being stored, where you captured it. Some people are very up here, they need here. Some people are very up here, but you have to go here to get there. Other people, this just makes them crazy if you start to talk that kind of stuff. So really, really important things that you're bringing out, just hugely important.
And I think what I see sometimes is people start moving, and it's the first time that they have that body-mind connection. What are you experiencing in your body? What are you feeling? And it's different than the go to the HIIT class, loud music, right? You're going through the motion. And sometimes you see people starting to cry, and they originally freak out and they're like, I don't know why I'm crying. I feel fine. Nothing is hurting, right? It's almost like that state of panic, like what's happening? And it's their body, just even if it's just stress, right? Just like, oh, I can breathe now and I can take a breath and not stress about the 100 things on my to-do list. But to your point, the body is very indicative. Like you said in the beginning, when you start judging and you start doing this, like in closing up, right? When you're talking to somebody and you start getting angry, you think you're not expressing it, but you can see how, maybe your fists are tightening up. That's your body speaking to you and expressing like, I am processing this and I feel it in such and such way. But we have become so body unaware, right? We don't pause and think and breathe. And you had mentioned it into your Authority Magazine interview, the breathing technique, right? Just breathe. Something as simple as breathing can do so much for our nervous system and to ground us and to kind of reset us.
And even some fun things, like one of the things that I often tell patients, you can make a distinction. Patients are my therapy patients, clients are my mentoring clients. If you those big balls, if you bounce on a ball, it helps to release emotion in an easy way. It's amazing. So if I'm in a session, somebody holding on to something, I say, could you tell me that story? Let's bounce on the ball. Or if I have group therapy and I'll have everybody like holding the ball and moving, and they're bouncing, and they will cry or they will release, their body will change. They'll get insights. They'll get just everything starts to shift. And it's funny because, can I share a story from my childhood?
Please do.
So I didn't have the easiest childhood. It was not one of these that you'd look at and say, oh my, but on a psychological level, it was not an easy childhood. And I would be upset and mad a lot and hurt and all kinds of things. And I had the misguided idea that if I held on to it, my parents would feel bad, somehow it would change, right? Didn't happen, just in case you have any doubt. But part of that holding on to it, I was young. This was for many years. I knew that if I went to my room, I was banished to my room, that if I turned on the radio and danced, I would feel better. And I wouldn't do it.
Oh, wow.
I wasn't going to stop being mad. I wasn't letting them off the hook, either because I didn't want to let them off the hook, or because I thought, like, if they felt bad, they would stop treating me like that. No. But it was interesting because even young, I knew that if I danced, and that's why a lot of times I'll say to somebody, want me to go dance. But don't do a rote thing, right? Not just a rote, but just dance where you're in your body.
Yeah.
Do freestyle dance. Dance with yourself. Dance like nobody's watching.
Yeah.
Dance like nobody's watching. Because when you start to open your body, the emotions, the thoughts, all of that changes. And it again goes back to where we started with forgiveness.
I was about to bring that up. Yes.
I had a student. It only happened one time, but I had a student in a workshop I was teaching, and we were talking about forgiveness, and he'd been abused pretty bad. And we talked about forgiveness, and he said, I have to leave. I said, why? He said, I am not willing to forgive. And I said, we talk about it. And he said, well, if I forgive, and I've seen this a lot with people holding themselves back from success or even being healthy. If I forgive, or if I have success, if my life is good, if my marriage is good, it makes it look like what they did to me wasn't so bad, because life turned out really pretty good for me. So he was very successful monetarily. And he was like, if I forgive, it's like making it seem like what they did wasn't so bad. And he said, I'm successful, but I have souvenirs from this. I have ways of it still pains me. And he was mixing up forgiveness as being the way to free himself.
Yeah. I had somebody, I was doing a forgiveness workshop, and the lady said, I don't want to let them off the hook.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, forgiveness is not about the other party. I mean, like you said, yes, you have to get to terms, but it's really about you. The way I say, stopping to chug that weight that's behind you, that you have to pull and struggle against it. It's liberating you from that. But yeah, the context of forgiveness, and and I think in the context of forgiveness, I think forgiving the self is probably the hardest thing to do.
Yeah, I don't think there's a doubt about it. I think it is the hardest thing to do. Yeah. I think that's really spot on. And it's interesting because when you forgive, you can get healthier, you can get more successful, you get more happy, and you don't even have to tell the other person. It's not about them. And sometimes you can. I mean, sometimes there've been some profound, you've probably read it, people listening to us, where somebody will send the murderer of their children a letter saying, I forgive you. And people are like, oh my God, how can they do it? And they did it, and they'll say they did it because they couldn't live anymore in that state of hatred and grief, that they did it so that they could heal. Not so that you forget it, not that you move on, not that you let the person out of jail. It doesn't mean that you condone the behavior or you want to hang out with them, right? It doesn't mean you stay in a marriage that's abusive. It doesn't mean a job where you're mistreated, or none of those things, but it means you free yourself and them. You free them to become a better person, even if they're in jail, and you free yourself to not be defined by what's happened to you.
By what the occurrence, yes, so well said. Dr. K, leave us with a favorite quote, something that speaks to you, something that inspires you.
Okay, there's a few of them, but I'm going to say one that I kind of made up that had to do with, I have a friend, he's not alive anymore. He died many years ago from cancer. He was an awesome friend, but he had a mother, as most of us do, right? He had a mother still today. We have mothers. And that was not a political comment. That was like they're trying to take everything away from humans, right? And we could have lab babies. But he had a mother who was kind of an interesting, like 90-some-odd-year-old Italian grandma, right? Type. And she used to say very wisely, her name was Esther Esposito. First, you look it up, and then you believe it. And I always ask,
say that again. Can you repeat it, please?
First, you make it up, and you believe it. And then I always add to that, and then you create your life to prove that it's true.
Oh, I like that.
And that's really powerful. Esther was like quite a woman, and my friend Tony that I miss, she was something, and it's true. First we make it up, and then we believe it, and then we, not for bad reasons at all, but we create our life. And the wonderful thing is that that's an unconscious choice most of the time. We can get conscious, and we can choose to create a new story, a new being, a new life. So for me, it's really about, who am I choosing to be? And then we create our life around that, instead of those old things that got programmed. And we even we get things passed down in our DNA. Now they understand what I used to say clinically, because I saw it, that trauma was passed down in our DNA. And now we can see there are amazing studies that validate it. So I guess what I want to leave is, we can choose how we create our life. You get to choose every day, every minute. And in closing, can I share the litmus test question that relates to that? So this is a question that I tell my clients, my patients, students, and myself, most importantly, is to ask this question every day. Does what I'm thinking, feeling, the way I'm acting, right, what I'm believing, does it bring me closer or farther to who I want to be, what I want to do, what I'm here on this Earth planet to do? If it does, you go for it. If it doesn't, don't. And I ask myself that question. It's my litmus test question for how I live my life.
I love it. That is some great wisdom to wrap up with. Dr. K, tell us, where can our listeners follow you and find you?
They can find me in a lot of places. My website, which is drkazlow.com, which is with a Z, Kazlow. They can find me on Facebook, Dr. Fern Kazlow, on Twitter, Dr. Kazlow, on LinkedIn, Dr. Fern Kazlow, any of those places. I got an Instagram account, haven't been too active there. So the best places really are Facebook probably best, Twitter and LinkedIn are the best places to reach out, or go to my website. I've actually got a new cool program that I'm going to be, that's dealing with a lot of the things that we're doing, but what's new about it is going to be very specific to some of the things going on in the world today, from AI and transhumanism and the extra uncertainty. I kind of say that, it's kind of like uncertainty, chaos, and sometimes downright crazy that we're confronted with. And so it's a program based on things that what I do, what I teach, but it's very targeted for now. So if people want to know more about that, all they need to do is go to the contact form on my website, or they could DM me or Facebook message me, whatever. I'm very responsive.
Make sure that we post your contact as we post the episode.
And I connect. So if I don't ever respond, I didn't get it somehow, and do it again. Don't say, oh, she just ignored me. No, I won't ignore you. Just reach out again. Comments, feedback, interest about programs, or just to share your story. Reach out.
Yes, and that's how we connected. So I really appreciate your time, Dr. K. Thank you so much for finding the time to be here and to inspire us and share your expertise. Wish you continued success. Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me. This has been so much fun. I love everything that you're bringing to raising the consciousness of the planet, to individual relationships. You make me smile when I see you, and you do inspire me. And I want to thank you for giving me an opportunity to talk to you. And
thank you. Yeah, it is my privilege and my pleasure. So thank you. Continued success. Thank you all for checking in. And please do let us know if you have any questions. Don't forget to stay rebellious. See you next time. Can't get enough of those rebellious conversations? Do make sure you subscribe, like, and share with your friends.